Good morning and welcome to another episode of Enlightenment Through Understanding and Wisdom with your host, Jacob Strong. How's everybody doing today? I hope everyone's doing okay today. It's kind of a wet and rainy day here in Billings, Montana. Sitting here looking out the office windows and yeah, it's of course Sunday, the 22nd of June. We had summer solstice yesterday, and yeah, so the days are going to start getting shorter here before too long. Anyway, in this episode, I just wanted to discuss what an empath, how we are viewed by others, and why there is such a misunderstanding. And my whole life, through my 20s and everything else, I always couldn't understand how people couldn't see, because as empaths, we speak in energy, we see in energy, we see and into the 5D. We don't just see the physical, we don't just hear what you are saying, we actually feel the emotions that you are feeling. We empathize with you. So that's what we're going to be talking about today is how we're perceptive as empaths, but then also um, why other people who are not empaths or who are narcissists can't understand how we know what we know and ends up with miscommunications and or worse. But anyway, so this is what people think that we are as empaths. They think that we feel sorry for people. They think that we're soft, that we're weak. They see our behavior, they see our expressions, they see the outside, they see our body language, they see our interaction, but they don't see anything else. And so when they see us shed a tear for someone, or see us shed a, you know, or apologize for something that we didn't do, they think that we are feeling sorry for someone. They think that, boo-hoo, poor them. But that's not actually the case. As an empath, we sense another person's emotions. So even when they don't shed a tear in front of you, we oftentimes know that there is something wrong. And sometimes we might say something. Sometimes we might say, you know, is there something that we can help you with? Is there? And so we try to get them to break the ice. We try to get them to, come out and talk to us. And and the reason is because we want to help them through it. We want to make this world a better place. We've been to hell. Hell is just a dimension on earth. It's not a place that exists outside of this world. So with that being said, we imagine what someone else is feeling. And a lot of times, especially, we don't have to imagine it if we've lived through it. As an empath, from a narcissistic abuser, I can relate to narcissistic abuse victims. I can relate to being sexually molested. I can relate to certain aspects. There's things that I can't relate to, um, that I can't imagine, I can't fathom. One of them would be, um, a drug user. Now, oftentimes, as a drug user, you have turned to drugs because of something going on in your life, and so I can relate to that individual if they've been, you know, sexually abused or molested as a child, or abused by a narcissistic spouse or parent. But I can't relate to them. I can't empathize with them when they turn to drugs because I haven't lived it, and I have no desire to ever try drugs. Um, but I still empathize with that drug user for what they have been through. And of course, the system's so corrupt, they just want to throw a drug user in federal prison instead of finding out the root problem of what caused them to turn to this. And, uh, and my experience with what I've been seeing 9 times out of 10, it stems from something that happened in their childhood that they're not discussing. And with men, it's even harder for them to be open and discuss that because they don't ever want to be the victim. And they again know that others view an empath as weak, but we're not weak. We're stronger than most. We've lived through more than what most have lived through. And so that's why it's critical that as a society that we stop viewing empaths as weak and soft and just feeling sorry for someone. And because the bottom line is it helps us to grow, to ascend, when we can share our stories and we can help other people. And so what we actually are and what others see is totally different. So what a non-empath sees in another individual, whether it's a narcissist or a empath, whatever it is, what someone who is disconnected with their emotions and is disconnected their um, with their energies, their chakra, whatever you'd like to call it, they see behavior, expressions, the outside, body language, interaction. And as empaths, that's the first thing that we see when we come up on a total stranger on the sidewalk. We are going to see that first. But then, as we begin to talk to them, but then as we open dialogue with them, we see loss. We see their past. We see trauma. We see feelings. We see pain. We see what they are thinking. We see their regrets. We see their struggles. And and so that's why, as an empath, it's difficult because, especially for us who don't turn to drugs, then our next motive is action. Our next motive is we got to do something. And and of course, using my life example as something as for y'all to understand, when my son is being abused by his mother and being a complete narcissist and emotionally and neglecting him and abusing him physically, I took matters into my own hand to protect him. And of course, the government doesn't see that. They just see behavior, expressions, the outside body language, interaction. They don't see what I seen. They don't see what I was trying to protect my son from. And it's very interesting because a lot of men that I met through prison and through going to prison, I found out there was actually a lot of men who didn't even turn to drugs until they lost their child. And some of them, a couple of them, even lost their child to suicide because that child couldn't deal with his narcissistic mother um, or stepmother or stepfather. And so, then the dads who never had drug history turn to drugs because they don't know how to help. They don't know how to help their child. They don't know how to help themselves. And of course, the corrupt government just slaps a felony on them instead of helping them and moves along to the next case and finding out what's really wrong with them. And so that's where the problem lies. That's where the government not seeing us for what we see, what we know. And again, it's so ironic because all you hear in the news every day is the mental illness that's on the rise in this country. Well, gee, I wonder why. And they're still not listening to us. They're still not listening to us empaths. They won't listen to me because I don't have a psychology degree. Well, why do you need a psychology degree when you've lived the life of an empath, when you have lived with extreme abuse, when you've lived? I already have my psychology degree. I don't need another one. It's called life experience. But they don't want to listen to us. They don't want to acknowledge what we've been through. They just want to, again, look at that outside, the behavior, the body language, the interaction, the expressions, and pass judgment strictly on that. And so that's what is, of course, the problem. So as an empath, what we see, what we experience when talking to someone on the street corner, we sense their emotions. We will mirror someone's feelings if we can relate. Just like I said, I can relate to someone who's been sexually abused. I can't relate to turning to drugs because that's not what I did. So I can mirror their feelings because I know what they've been through. I can imagine what someone else is thinking because, again, I've been through that. I can identify how the person is feeling. We can feel overwhelmed by others' tragedy. And, and again, this is why I don't watch a lot of movies, because I can actually be overwhelmed just by someone's loss, just by someone's tragedy, just by something that's happened to them in the movie, and it becomes real for me as an empath. And so that's where we'll talk about recharging. We'll come back to recharging. Listening to understand what others have to say. We listen to understand. We don't just listen to reply. We listen to hear that person, to find a way to help them if we can. And sometimes we can't, and that's what makes it difficult, is sometimes we can't help that individual. Understanding another one's feelings. And again, that's where listening to understand as opposed to listening to reply comes in. seeing things from another person's point of view, we can do that. And again, my life is living proof of that. When me and my ex got together, she would often say how God had told her to marry her ex-husband. And of course, I was, religious at one point. I believed in Christianity. And, and so I could understand what she was saying. I could, you know, see from her point of view why she didn't want to get divorced. It wasn't until much later that I found out all the lies. But at the time, I seen it from her perspective. I seen it from her point of view. To the point where every time there was an argument, every time I wanted something or needed something, she would override it with what she wanted and what she would need it, and she would justify it using the Bible. And of course, then I, would just look at it from her point of view and just be like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. That's true. But the interesting thing is then when I would bring something up that contradicts what she just said out of the same book that she proclaimed to be, um, you know, reading out of, that she proclaimed to be getting her wisdom out of, she would dismiss it and say, well, that doesn't apply. That doesn't apply in this particular circumstance. And so, you know, so then I would just rest my case on her point of view strictly. And of course, that's how a narcissist rules. That's how a narcissist ruins the family and destroys and breaks you down, is because they only get what they want out of the relationship. And they dismiss your feelings. They dismiss um, your needs as an individual. And so, and then of course, what's worse is once they start getting away with it, then they just keep going till they're abusing you, till they're flat out abusing you. And, like my ex, she just flat out moved out of my house. She, wanted me to buy her a house in Thompson Falls. She wanted me to do all of this other stuff so that she didn't even have to live with me, because she didn't want to live with me. Again, she came into the relationship with one thing, with one goal, and that was checkbook. And that's it. That's all she wanted. So, so yeah, um, so that's how there's that disconnect, that feeling of not being heard, and and of course that's what I'm going through right now. Is my son is not being heard. He is crying for help, and no one is acknowledging his pain. And so, as empaths, we need to start getting stronger. We need to start stepping up and screaming to the top of our lungs the injustice that's happening. Because the bottom line is we shouldn't have to take a gun, or we shouldn't have to take to violence, or we shouldn't have to. We should just be heard. We should just be listened to and understood. And um, nothing gets resolved with violence. And so that's where, you know, so that's where that's at. So anyway, um, yeah. So to recap, what we found out is if you are not an empath, what you see as an empath is someone who feels sorry for someone who's soft, someone who's weak. What you see in us is behavior expression, the outside, body language, interaction. What we are and what we see. What we see is their loss, their past, their trauma, their feelings, their pain, their thoughts, their energies, their regrets, their struggles. What we see, what we are, is sensing others' emotions, mirroring someone's feelings, mirroring someone's emotions, feeling what they are feeling back with them, empathizing with them, imagining what someone else is thinking because we've been there, identifying how a person is feeling because we know how we felt in that same situation, feeling overwhelmed by others' tragedies, listening to understand what others have to say, understanding others' feelings. Sorry, just making a note here. Imagining how someone is feeling, seeing things from another's point of view. And what I wanted to go back to is feeling overwhelmed by others' tragedies. This is why empaths spend so much time alone. As most of you know, I'm an HVAC technician, and I'm happiest when I'm on the roof of a shopping mall alone. I'm happiest when I am alone working. I don't like to work on residential stuff because I don't get any alone time. Customer's there, I'm speaking with the customer. And being alone for an empath, they spend a lot of time alone. And that's because they've absorbed so much tragedy from someone else. They've absorbed so much energy from someone else that they're exhausted. And so for me, to sit and listen to someone's story and to see what I know is happening and to empathize with them, my break comes when I go to work. When I go to work working on an RTU or a furnace, because now my feelings are put to rest, my emotions are put to rest. I can focus on something else. I can focus on something that is needs to be done right, and something that that I can fix. And as an empath, there's a lot that I can't fix with regards to helping people. Even though you try to get them to open up and you try to get them to talk with you, and it's tough because a lot of them don't. They don't open up to you. They won't talk with you. And so yeah, so that's why you will find us sitting alone. You'll find us sitting alone in school. You'll find us sitting alone on the park bench. And because that's our recharge time. That's our time that we can recharge our batteries and take on more. There's I don't know if you want to call it a theory, or there's been this thing that's gone around for years, and that is why a cat sleeps so much. And that is because they take your negative chakra, your negative emotions, your negative, and they absorb all that. And so that's why they sleep all the time. And the Egyptians also believed that, and that's why they, worshipped cats. So they believed that they are five-dimensional beings as well. And you will often find that empaths, like cats, and empaths usually have a lot of cats, and that's because that cat shares that burden with them. That service animal helps them to overcome that. And so yeah, so you know, whether you believe that as an individual or not, that's for you to decide. However, there is a correlation between empaths and having a lot of cats, or having cats, period, and having a good connection with those cats is definitely evident and obvious. And so yeah, so that's what we look for as well, is some place to get rid of that negative energy, some place to get rid of that that hell on earth, if we'll call it that. So anyway, I hope that y'all like this episode, and I hope that it helps y'all, because ultimately that's been my whole goal, is to raise awareness and to help people overcome what they're going through, to help people overcome what they've been through, and to validate for them that what they have gone through and what they are going through is real. And so again, I have an office here in Billings, Montana. You can visit my website, www.etuw.org, and you can communicate with me through there, and you can come and talk to me. I would appreciate it if you'd reach out and come and talk to me and help me raise awareness to this issue for my son, for the children of this world. Because ultimately, if we can help our children heal, we'll reduce suicide rates. We will reduce the pain our children are going through due to the corrupt system, the corrupt legal system. And so please visit my website, reach out to me there. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. And it's still slightly raining here in Billings. And we'll talk to you later. Have a good day. Thank you.